So when you have the right thoughts, that is important in the Noble Eightfold Path. What these Noble Eightfold Path, renunciation means the renunciation of internal and external objects. So it is just not being a monk or just leaving home. It is the leaving of craving itself. So that is the big difference in this Noble Eightfold Path. That in our practice, we start to note the objects internally and externally. Externally, we note the seeing objects, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching objects. We note it, and therefore, by noting it, the objects do not become strong. It becomes strong and control the mind that give rise to strong cleaning. So, that is, by practice, by gradually building up this renunciation or detachment. It does not mean that detachment is leaving home, merely leaving home or leaving your loved ones. It does not mean that. It means that you can stay in home, you can have your loved ones, and yet you can be quite detached, but with a lot of compassion and kindness. Now the detachment, a lot of people think that detachment means that by leaving them is detachment. By non-caring is detachment. Detachment means that giving away is detachment. Now it is not so. Detachment, which is the alobha cetasikas in the Pali words, means that it arises in the mind, this detachment, but it can arise together with kindness, with caring, with compassion, or even with wisdom. Now, the big difference is that if you study the Abhidhamma, how the mind can arise with detachment and yet with a lot of caring. You can have a lot of kindness towards your children or your wife or your husband or brothers and sisters, a lot of caring, a lot of caring, a lot of goodwill. That if they have no money, you can lend them money. If they are sick, you visit them, you bring food to them. A lot of caring, and yet one could have detachment arises in the mind together with the kindness. Now this part of detachment that is very subtle, and a lot of people miss out this part of the detachment mind. They think that detachment means going away. Detachment means renunciation, means renounce the family, renounce everything, even renounce their money. No, it is not only physical renunciation, but mental renunciation, and yet it can arise with a lot of caring. In other words, you could care for that person very deeply, caring and goodwill to your wife or children or husband, and yet be detached. Detached means that if anything happens to them, if they are sick, if they are dying, there is this compassion, there is this wisdom arising, yet the mind is free from harm and sorrow. The person who has that love, the kindness and caring, and yet the mind could still be peaceful and calm. Now it is this type of practice, as you meditate, you start to recognize such type of mind states arising. And you can be aware that the practice of this detachment, sometimes we translate it as renunciation. is different from the parami of renunciation. Now there are 10 types of parami. To become a Sammasambuddha, in many of the lives, the Bodhisattva has to renounce the worldly life, give up worldly life by not being married, or even after married, to give away the family life and go forth to perfect his paramis. Now, this type of renunciation is different. It's different from the renunciation of the objects, external object, internal objects. Even though a Bodhisattva not only renounces the worldly life, but he also practices the renunciation of the objects as well. The objects as well. But as a layman, we can practice the other types of renunciation, but with kindness and compassion. Alright? So you see that in the right thoughts, in the Noble Eightfold Path, Nikkama Sankappa, renunciation, also has the second and third, which is right thoughts, free from ill will, anger, hatred, and thoughts free from harming. From harming. So there are these 3 types of right thoughts. So then, so actually, what is this renunciation? It is the renunciation of craving by cultivating the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Otherwise, one would not be able to escape totally from rebirth. How this rebirth comes about? By the 3 forms of craving that we have gone through. 3 forms of craving, right? Now rebirth leads to suffering, because there are 4 types that one could not escape from. So, one could not escape from birth. If there is craving, one cannot escape from birth. Now, one cannot escape from sicknesses, decaying. In other words, once there is birth, there is decaying. We age, we grow old. So one could not escape from growing old. No matter what medicine you eat or what injection you put into your body, you could not escape from aging, decaying, right? The body could not always be 16 years old. It has to decay. And decaying, one cannot escape from sicknesses and pain. And therefore, one could not escape from dying and death. So these are 4 things that one could not escape from, as long as there is this craving. Right? So the only way out of craving is having right view. The right view of the 3 sections of the right view. And just now I was covering the 10 subject. There really exists good and evil deeds done to the parents. Now, sometimes people think that parents have to take care of us, just as one day we have to repay back and take care of our children. So, in other words, parents deserve to look after us because it will be a time for us, our turn to look after our children. Now, it is not deserved to look after us. Parents look after children out of love, kindness, compassion. And so therefore, when the children, when they grow up, and the parents, when they are old, the duty of the children to look after the parents. Therefore, there is this right view that if we look after the parents, therefore there is merits, or there are great merits looking after the parents. But some children don't think so. They think that the parents give birth to me, right? So therefore, they have to look after me. Just as next time when I have children, then it's my turn to look after the children. But the Buddha says there are great merits looking after the parents. But on the other hand, if we learn to meditate, and when we grow old, we have something to do. When we are no longer having so much energy, we cannot run about. Once we are staying in the house, then we have something to occupy our mind. If you learn meditation, then you occupy your mind by practice mindfulness in the house. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of remorse. When you're old, you can't do anything, and you're sitting alone in the house, you experience great loneliness. You feel very lonely and miserable and sad. Because children, they have their work to do, they sometimes look after their own families, and they really do not have much time for the parents. So they can't be with the parents all the time, because they have other duties to perform. So it is good that as a Buddhist, we learn the fundamental how to meditate, and we have to learn to look after ourselves, especially when we grow old. When we can't move about, we cannot just go visiting, we cannot just drive anywhere we want to go, depending on people to drive us, our children to take care of us. Then if you learn meditation, you're still able to cultivate, keep your mind occupied, free from defilements. There really exists beings who are born apparitional rebirth. So again, that is the right view. Right view in a sense that there are other beings apart from human beings. There are those that are unseen beings. There are beings that are born in the heavenly world, and those beings in the lower world. Now that is a right view. That is a right view. Now this question was asked to the Buddha. Why must one believe that there are those beings, unseen beings, who are born in the heavenly world, and those beings that are born in the lower world? Why must we believe that? Because we can't see them, we can't feel them. So why must we believe in such things, which are merely a concept, a belief? And the Buddha says that it is a right belief, it is a right view, and it is good, because if one do not believe in this unseen world, that human cannot see them, and if one does not perform wholesome action, and then when one passes away, because lack of right view, one will be born in the lower world. But if one believes, that there is these other worlds, like those unseen world, and if one were to perform wholesome action, and therefore one benefits, after passing away, there's the benefits of being born in the heavenly world. So the Buddha again many times expounded this theory that if one believes that there is another life, a future life, therefore one holds the precept, one practices wholesomeness by keeping precepts, by not killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, and intoxicant. Then the Buddha asked those non-believers, then is it so? By such abstinence, one would have happy life here and now, and then they say, it is so. Yes, oh ascetic Gautama, it is so, that if one does not steal, one does not kill, then one have no fear of being caught and thrown in prison. One do not lie. If one lie, then whatever one say, people would not believe us. If one take drugs, then one would fall into suffering. So there are benefits by such types of belief. Then the Buddha says, indeed, if one believes that there is another life, there is an unseen world, those beings that are unseen, and by keeping precepts, one gain happiness here, and one gain happiness in the afterlife. So the Buddha expounded on these right views in various ways. When those who do not believe seek out the Buddha to ask the question. So in fact, the Buddha expounded the 31 planes of existence. There is the 4 lower world, including the animal world, 1 human world, and 6 Deva world, and the 20 planes of the Brahma world. So altogether, there are 31 planes of existence, and there are millions other world systems. Million other world systems. So human world are not the only world where there are living beings. They have their own system. They have own sun and moon, and they have their own world system. So there are many others, beings that we do not know of, we cannot see or feel. Then the third section of the right view, of course, is the 4 noble truths. So that is very important. If one do not have this right view of the 4 noble truths, then it is not possible to gain enlightenment. Only the 4 noble truths, the truth of suffering. If one do not understand suffering, one would not seek the way out of suffering. So only when one have right view of suffering, then one seek the way out of suffering, which comes to the Noble Eightfold Path. Then the Buddha says, with regarding to the views, the Buddha says that views are pernicious, meaning dangerous. It can take one to the lower world of existence. If a person holding wrong views, his deeds, words, plan and purpose, grounded in their views, will lead one to suffering. But if a person holding right views, his deeds, words, plan and purpose, grounded in that views, will lead one to happiness. So I will just have a short talk on to the right views and right thinking for tonight, and next week we cover the other aspects of the Eightfold Path, the right speech, right action, right livelihood. All right. So right view must always be it must be balanced up with the right thoughts. If one holds things that he has the right views, but it's not balanced with the right thoughts, then therefore it is not under the Noble Eightfold Path, and it does not lead to the end of suffering. Alright? So the right views must always balance up with compassion, with kindness, with renunciation. So of course there are the 62 types of wrong views. So we need to avoid the wrong views. If one has the wrong views, then one would not have right views. And wrong views would lead to a lot of wrong practice or wrong action. And that leads to samsara, leading to rebirth, to the rounds of birth and death. So it is important to reflect on the Noble Eightfold Path and to understand the right view. Now, we have right view in the beginning, and we have right view as we practice, and the right view at the end, which is the realization, which is also under right view. So the classification sometimes is classified under sila, morality, samadhi under concentration, and panya under realization. But in the Noble Eightfold Path, it always comes with the right view first, that one must have right view in order to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Without right view, then all is lost. If one believe in almighty beings, that only through His grace can one be saved, then if one does not put in effort to practice ourselves, to meditate, then in other words, one would not gain freedom from suffering, because one give up their efforts, their right to practice. So, right views in the karma, with regard to karma, is very, very important. Only believe that in oneself, that if one puts in the effort, then there will be resultant. If one does not put in the effort, there will be no resultants. So, karma is very important aspects of the right view, that we have faith that even if we don't attain enlightenment here in this life now, but with the right effort, continuous right effort, one day we reach to the end of suffering. So having right view, having right view is the most important part as a Buddhist. So without right view, no matter what religion one profess in, without the right view, one would not gain the end of suffering. So if other teaching claim that they have right views, then they must be measure with what? They must have measure right view with karma, right view with cause and effect, right view with the Four Noble Truths of suffering, cause of suffering, and the practice of Four Foundations of mindfulness. They must have these as right views. Otherwise, the right views that they have is only their right views, not the Noble Eightfold Path types of right views, not the Buddhist types of right views. To us, we do not consider these views as right views because they do not lead to the end of suffering. And so, having right view, one will develop right thoughts. That means purity of mind by way of kindness, abstain from cruelty, abstain from harming others. Then we develop compassion so that we can overcome the greed and hatred. By loving kindness overcome hatred, and compassion overcomes the cruelty. Right? And by renunciation, we overcome greed, strong attachment, strong clinging to objects internally and externally by renunciation. So these factors, these right thoughts covers the practice in meditation. Alright? And as we go to the other parts of the Noble Eightfold Path, then we have the groundwork, the foundation of sila, morality, how to practice morality, what is precepts, and what are considered as precepts, what are not considered as precepts, and how do we keep the precepts, and as a foundation to build up the purity of mind, concentration, how to develop concentration, the three factors of concentration. And so that covers the the Four Noble Truths. Alright? And how could we apply that Four Noble Truths in the practice? And I have taught something about that in the last talk. And how when we practice the four foundations of mindfulness, we are actually practicing the Four Noble Truths. Okay? So tonight is a short talk.